In our headlines on this Monday afternoon, February 26th, here in South Korea. The collective action undertaken by doctors in training starting last week in response to government plans to boost medical school admissions quota is looking to expand as medical school graduates turn their backs on internships at hospitals, fueling greater concerns over wider disruptions of essential healthcare. Meanwhile, Seoul's Economy and Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok says the government intends to nurture 1,000 green startups by the year 2027 and 10 pre-unicorn green companies as part of global efforts to ease our carbon footprints by seeking sustainable economic growth initiatives. And speaking to members of the media this past Sunday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy reveals that at least 31,000 Ukrainian soldiers have sacrificed their lives for their country since the start of Russian invasion on February 24, 2022. The tug-of-war between doctors in training and the government here continues, with medical school graduates this time looking to join the collective action by turning their backs on internships. Our Shin Se-byuk starts us off.
Now it's new medical school graduates who are set to join the nation's large-scale trainee doctor strike by refusing to take internships. Hospitals have been scrambling, relying on attending physicians and professors to step in to fill medical service gaps left by a mass exodus of trainee doctors that began last Tuesday. However, the healthcare crisis is poised to deepen with medical school graduates turning down intern positions. According to Seoul National University Hospital, 80 to 90% of interns due to start on March 1st haven't signed their contracts. While at Busan National University Hospital in Busan, all 50 internship candidates slated to start Friday have resigned. Fellows are also contemplating joining the collective action by not renewing their contracts. Attending and fellow doctors from around 80 university hospitals nationwide issued a statement last week where they said that practicing medicine has become untenable amid vilification by the public. The staffing shortage has forced major Seoul hospitals to cut surgeries and treatments by up to half. So far, nearly 80% of the nation's 13,000 trainee doctors from 94 major hospitals have resigned. As of Monday, Samsung Medical Center reduced its surgery schedule by 45 to 50%. Seoul Asan Hospital initially scaled back surgeries by 30 to 40% during the first week of the strike, but has now decided to reduce them further to 40 to 50%. Other hospitals like St. Mary's Hospital and Seoul National University Hospital have also adjusted their surgery schedules in response to the strike. As the strike wave spreads, the nation's Interior Minister Lee Sang-min said in a briefing on Monday that the government would not hold doctors accountable if they return to work by February 29th. He also urged doctors to engage in dialogue with the government for better medical service conditions. In the meantime, the Korean Medical Association has called for an immediate halt to the government's expansion plans, warning of legal action. Arguing such a move would not only compromise the quality of medical education, the KMA said the entire medical sector will fight back using every legal means available until the end. Meanwhile, the KMA is planning a massive rally in Yeouido on the 3rd of the next month, with 20,000 doctors expected to attend. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in line with global efforts to ease our carbon footprints, the government has shared a roadmap to green growth that includes tangible support for green startups. Our Moon Hae-ryan reports.
In an emergency economic meeting held on Monday, the government revealed its plans for strengthening the country's green industry for global markets.
We will be strengthening support for the green industry by fostering 1,000 green startups by 2027.
It also aims to nurture 10 select pre-unicorn firms in the industry. Pre-unicorn companies are startups with a value of over 100 billion Korean won, or roughly $75 million. The government plans to provide step-by-step support from setting up their business to overseas expansion, including operating a green startup lab where companies can test run their technologies and products. As pre-unicorn companies are currently unable to apply for various types of support due to their comparatively lower sales, the government is aiming to supplement this. Furthermore, 10 key sectors of green businesses have been selected for concentrated support, as the government deems domestic technology in said areas to be among the world's best. These include the likes of secondary batteries, renewable energy waste, and waste plastic. In order to advance into new overseas markets, the government will be targeting specific environmental problems facing each country and offering solutions. Examples stated were proposing alternatives for safe water management policies in Southeast Asian countries and branding Seoul's resource circulation policies for South American countries that are reliant on landfill sites without recycling. Another topic area that was discussed in the meeting was furthering financial support for vulnerable groups such as small business owners that are struggling with high interest rates on their loans. By the end of next month, the government plans to come up with a specific outline for who will be able to receive support and how, such as offering rent support and returning interest paid on loans. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Prices of public services rose on year in January. According to Statistics Korea on this Monday, 30 public services, including utilities, healthcare expenses and transport costs, were up 2.2% on year. Now, this is reportedly the biggest jump in 27 months. Rising costs for healthcare and public transport were the main driving factors. The government has pledged to work with local authorities to keep these prices in check. Also, on the local front, few here in Korea have been buying flowers from the shops. In fact, shopkeepers say even school graduation these days appears to be little cause for celebration with flowers. Our Park Gun-woo tells us why.
Only about 60%. This is what one flower shop owner said when asked how much sales had recovered during the recent graduation season compared to pre-pandemic levels. Graduation season in Korea during December through February is usually when the flower industry sales blossom. But lately, it's been wilting.
Because people haven't been buying flowers that often, even after COVID-19, the need for flowers has disappeared. If people had been continuously buying flowers, they would be interested in buying them and sometimes even making a habit out of buying flowers.
One expert offered other reasons.
There's the perception that flowers are too expensive. And along with the decrease of the school-age population, shrinking overall consumption are other reasons as well.
According to the auction price data from Korea Agro-Fisheries and Food Trade Corporation earlier this month, the prices of many flowers used in graduation bouquets saw on-year increases. In particular, hydrangea was up by around 150%, Gypsophila rose by 30%, and freesia around 10%. Experts say factors include bad weather and increased imports of low-cost flowers. So, due to higher prices, people are looking at ways to buy flowers more cheaply.
I usually go to flower markets and buy them in bulk to get them at a more reasonable price.
Some are even trading flowers through used goods smartphone apps. A graduation bouquet like this can cost as much as between $20 and $50, but they are also being traded at lower prices, sometimes reduced by more than 50% on used goods apps. Bouquets that are said to have been used only for a short time to take pictures with at graduation ceremonies are being traded using these platforms. With this having a knock-on effect on the flower industry, one expert says there are ways to see it bloom again.
The distribution stage should be reduced, prices should be lowered for consumers, and appropriate compensation should be given to farmers and for labor costs due to the change in the labor environment.
And the expert concluded the government should come up with actual measures to revive the industry, along with its 5-year promotional plan announced in 2022 to increase flower production volume by over $520 million by the year 2026. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
A South Korea-based company has been included in a new list of U.S. sanctions for supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. Daesung International Trading was among 93 entities on the latest blacklist disclosed by the U.S. last Friday. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, the head of this particular company is a Pakistani national, and the South Korean government had been informed of the irrelevant development by the U.S. in advance. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says 31,000 soldiers have sacrificed their lives for their country amid Russian invasion since February 2022. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
Saturday marked 2 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began the war that's still very much ongoing. The brutal war has led to the death of many civilians, but the Ukrainian government had not released an official figure on the number of soldiers killed in action. However, on Sunday, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy held a press conference in Kyiv and said that a total of 31,000 of the country's soldiers had been killed in the war. He slammed lies by Russian President Vladimir Putin and his government that some 150 to 300,000 Ukrainian soldiers died on the battlefield. Still, the Ukrainian leader said that each death is a huge loss to the country. Both Ukraine and Russia have kept the scale of their military's troop losses confidential to prevent enemies from using the death toll for propaganda purposes. So far, major foreign media outlets have only been estimating the number of military deaths by citing internal sources. The 31,000 military deaths announced by President Zelenskyy is significantly lower than the figure claimed by Russia and the amount of Ukrainian troop losses estimated by the West. UK-based newspaper The Economist last November reported that American officials estimated that 70,000 Ukrainian soldiers were killed in action, while 120,000 were injured. The New York Times reported last August that Russian military casualties had reached 300,000, while Ukrainian military casualties reached approximately 200,000. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu claimed last month that Ukraine lost 215,000 troops in just 2023 alone. During Sunday's press briefing, Zelenskyy further called for Western support and urged the U.S. Congress to pass an additional budget for Ukraine. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And on a light note now, at the Berlin International Film Festival this past weekend, much applause was extended to a pair of Korean directors, including Sang-soo for his latest screen production. Our Eun-jin has more on the plot. Do take a look.
Director Sang-soo's 31st feature film, A Traveler's Needs, premiered at the 74th Berlin International Film Festival and on Saturday won the Silver Bear Grand Jury Prize. Telling the story of a French woman, played by French actress Isabelle Huppert, who travels to Korea where she teaches a local woman to speak French. The movie highlights the themes of life's unbearable nature and the importance of communication. This is Hong's 7th time entering the Berlinale competition section and his 5th time winning the Silver Bear. 6 South Korean films were featured at this year's festival, highlighting once again the diversity and creativity of Korean cinema. In his acceptance speech, Hong thanked the jury for the prize and said he did not know what the jurors saw in his film exactly, which drew laughter from the audience. But he also expressed how he trusted working with actress Isabelle Huppert.
This might sound very, very irresponsible, but I don't know what I am doing in a way. As I said to her, I have some objective. And I have a kind of a recognized working method that I like. I have developed, and I believe in a certain, how can I say, happening between people.
Huppert has developed a unique relationship with the Korean auteur. Marking her 3rd film with Hong, she spoke of how everything in her relationship with the director has been unscripted and by chance.
I did 2 other films with Sang-soo, and his way of making films is unique. I only know him for doing films like this, and so I was enthusiastic about repeating the experience. In fact, it's very difficult to project yourself in a story or in a role, because there is no role and no story. So, and this is what I really like about it.
Also in competition at the festival was the feature directorial debut of Kim Hae-young. Her film It's Okay, about an orphaned young dancer, won the Crystal Bear for Best Film, an award given out by a jury of children in the Generation K+ section that's dedicated to coming-of-age stories. The Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism, Yoo In-chon, sent congratulatory messages to the two directors, praising this achievement as a proud moment that announces the elevated status of Korean cinema worldwide. Lee In-jin, Arirang News.
Staying on the silver screen, actor Timothée Chalamet was in Seoul last week, much to the delight of fans here, to promote his latest production while graciously accepting praise for his role in another currently playing production. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin has more.
My name is Timothée Chalamet. I play Paul Atreides in Dune Part 2.
This 28-year-old American actor is currently making waves at the Korean box office. The musical fantasy film Wonka, featuring Chalamet as young Willy Wonka, topped the box office for 22 consecutive days following its release, becoming the first film of the year to surpass 2 million ticket sales. While February is considered a low season for the big screen, Wonka is about to face competition from another Chalamet film, the sci-fi Dune Part 2. This sets the stage for a two-way showdown between the chocolate man Chalamet and the space army commanding Chalamet.
And I feel that my films, whether it's The King or Dune or Wonka right now, have been as warmly received in Korea as they have been anywhere in the world.
It's a blockbuster sequel following Part 1's triumph during the pandemic. Despite COVID's grip, the Frank Herbert novel-based sensation raked in $400 million at the global box office and sold over 1.6 million tickets in Korea alone. This sensation even brought up the term dun친자, meaning Duniac in Korean.
Dune's success comes from the star power of Timothée Chalamet, director Denis Villeneuve's visual effects, and his skillful handling of suspense. Although the genre of space opera wasn't particularly popular in Korea, the movie succeeded because it simplified the original novel's universe into this tight, gripping storyline, making it enjoyable for all.
Part 2 will focus on the main character, Paul Atreides, seeking revenge against the people who killed his family. Oppenheimer director Christopher Nolan likened the movie to Empire Strikes Back, often regarded as the best in the Star Wars film franchise.
I will say that Dune Part 2 is a much more muscular movie, meaning about action. There's more.
However, the two Chalamet movies are facing another strong competitor. The Korean occult thriller Exuma, starring veteran actor Choi Min-sik, ended Wonka's 3-week box office dominance on the day of its premiere. For the movies themselves, it's a competition, but a treat for film enthusiasts. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In the United States, former President Donald Trump has won the South Carolina Republican presidential primary. Trump, following news of his victory on Saturday, said that he's never seen the Republican Party so unified as it is right now. He defeated the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, who vowed to continue her 2024 presidential campaign in a speech titled "The Fight Goes On" after a South Carolina primary loss. Saturday's defeat is a painful blow to Haley, who was born in South Carolina and served as the state's governor from 2011 to 2017. Trump has been victorious in all three of the other Republican presidential primaries in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. Now, the American voters wait for next week's Super Tuesday, where more than a dozen states will cast their votes in the presidential primaries. In Spain, police confirmed Saturday that 10 people were killed in a fire that swept a 14-story apartment block in the country's eastern city of Valencia on Thursday. Some 100 survivors remain housed in a local hotel or with relatives as they seek for a more permanent solution. Hundreds of people gathered outside of Valencia City Hall on Saturday for a moment of silence to mourn the victims. Amid the tragedy came the story of a Ukrainian family who lost everything in the fire, being helped by a Russian family. According to media reports, Ukrainian Hambarov Dmitro and his family received clothes and food from a Russian family in Valencia following the blaze. In the UK, junior doctors in England began a 5-day strike on Saturday over pay disputes with the government. This is the 10th junior doctor strike since last March, when the British Medical Association asked for a 35% pay rise, but was turned down by the country's ministers. According to Health Secretary Victoria Atkins, more than 1.3 million hospital appointments and operations have already been cancelled or rescheduled since the strike began. Junior doctors in Northern Ireland are planning to take a similar protest for 2 days in March. The latest polling from YouGov showed that 50% of the UK public still supports the junior doctors, while 43% were against them. In entertainment news,
Interrupt our news coverage to bring you live feed of President Yoon Suk-yeol's opening remarks at the 15th session of the government's policy briefing.
Hello, we will begin the 15th edition of the policy discussion with the people. Here at the Seosan Air Base, we are going to talk about many things under the theme of Chungnam, full of vitality through future industries. The President will deliver his opening remarks. Here at Chungnam is the center of Pan-Yellow Sea region, and I'm very glad to see you all. As I was coming to Seosan today, during my presidential campaign, I had a pledge to the people of Chungnam, and I was reminded of them. It was the cutting-edge industry complex and also Cheonan Medical and Dental Research Center. Those were some of my pledges, and also the civil airport construction as well. For Chungnam to take a fresh leap forward, I will take stock of everything myself. First of all, about the civil airport, it started out its first step this year. The runway of the Air Force Air Base, it will be utilized for civilians as well. Here at the 20th Air Base is the biggest Air Force base in Korea. And this is where the strongest Air Force is stationed. And it will be expanded. The role of the Air Force here will be expanded to upholding people's defense nationwide. And it is important that we construct a civilian-military coexistence model. And we, as the government, has been pursuing variety of policies in this regard. And we have lifted the military facility protection zone, looking into the needs of the residents without compromising security. At the moment, 8.2% of the nationwide land is under the military facility protection zone, and it is heavily regulated, and therefore it is very difficult to construct necessity focused facilities such as schools. And such regulations were introduced in the 1970s, and many things have changed ever since. All areas around the country has been changed, and the needs of the residents have risen. And ever since my government
had taken office, we looked very thoroughly into the needs of the national security as well as the needs of the residents. So as long as it does not compromise the security, we will lift the military facility protection zone. In particular, the airbase, Seosan Air Base, the vicinity of it, almost all area around this airbase is under the military facility protection zone. And nationwide, such protection zone is a total of 103 million pyong. And here in Seosan, it's 42.7 million pyong. And until now, this zone here in Seosan, I understand that there were plans to connect this area into a plan to make it into a zone where the industry can take a full-fledged development. And with the lifting of the protection zone, I believe that this would be pursued in earnest, and I look forward to a great success and a best practice project that will be a success for sure. Last week in Ulsan, we have announced the rationalization of farmland use, and with the military facility protection zone that has been cancelled, now Chungnam will be taking another leap to become an economic center of the Pan-Yellow Sea region. Until now, Chungnam has been at the center of automobile and display, and also the light emitting OLED has also been produced in Chungnam. And Chungnam, centered around Seosan and the Bay Area, this can take another leap into a place where it could be competing with the Silicon Valley, and the government will do our utmost in this endeavor. Also, Chungnam to be the base for future mobility industry and the center of Korea's defense industry, we will do our support as much as we can. Last year in April, the 15 areas around the country, we have announced the 15 complexes, national industrial complexes last year, and in Chungnam, Cheonan City and Hongseong-gun were designated as the industrial complexes, and we would like to begin the construction as soon as possible, so that it is specialized in future mobility industry, and also using the national defense industry, excellent national defense industry infrastructure, we will develop it into specialized cluster for national defense industry. And within this year, the site development will begin, the design of site development will begin, and the construction will take its leap forward in 2026. And I will make sure to nurture the defense industry of Chungnam for sure. Although we designate such national defense complex, it really takes a long time for this to materialize, and sometimes it feels a bit suffocating because of this slow pace. So from now on, even before the preliminary study, if there is a need, we are going to assist in earnest, and also when the construction of the site is completed, it should be able to go on to build the facilities as soon as possible. And the newly built industrial complexes of Chungnam, in Cheonan, Hongseong, and Nonsan, all the auxiliary equipment and the necessary facilities will be developed from the planning stage. And as I iterated before, all the
necessary facilities should be coming in together with the industrial complexes such as finance, cultural, and convenient facilities, so that culture and industries can come together and young people can gather. And here in Chungnam, if such things could materialize, the production inducement effect here in Chungnam will be of 24.1 trillion won and employment inducement effect of 81,000 people. And also, companies can directly acquire land, establish development plans, and supply the sites, and that will be corporate innovation park that will be established in Dangjin City. And 35 mobility corporations would come in, and this will be a compound complex, and this will bring in more than 9 trillion production inducement effect, and also more than 35,000 people of employment inducement effect. And for this, we are going to spare no effort in supporting it with taxation support. Taean is where the future mobility services are realized, and it will be made into a smart city. Last year, May, Hyundai Construction and Hyundai Motor came together to announce its smart mobility plan. And with financial support and prompt licensing from next year onwards, Taean will be able to see an establishment of smart city in earnest. And also, in Chungnam, by designating the economic zone, we are going to create more synergy with different corporations coming together. An employment and industrial zones are not enough for the regions to be a livable place. We need medical system and also educational systems. And therefore, we are going to build police hospital in Asan City to supplement the local medical system in Chungnam, so that both police and residents can enjoy the quality medical services. And also, the Nepo campus of Chungnam National University will be actively supported, so that this place could be the center of the advanced education for the future. With the mayor of Chungnam, Kim Tae-hung, who is here, and many residents of Chungnam are here, and we are going to have a candid discussion of the future direction of Chungnam, and we will reflect your opinions as much as possible. Thank you very much.
네, 대통령님 말씀 감사드립니다.
Right, that was President Yoon Suk-yeol's opening remarks at the 15th session of the government's policy briefing open to members of the public, currently taking place at Seosan Air Base in Chungcheongnam-do Province, where he highlighted the region's role in national security and its potential to be transformed into a commercial zone for broader economic growth. Now, we will bring you details of this particular session in our evening newscast.
Good afternoon. We had a freezing start to the new week in the capital, but highs are going up fast to reach above norms, topping out at 9 degrees in the afternoon. And tomorrow looks to be similar to what we have today. Meanwhile, there's no end in sight for snow in mountainous regions of Gangwon-do. In fact, the area was crowded over the weekend with people wishing to catch the snow-capped mountains. And more snow is in the forecast, with mountainous regions in Gangwon-do potentially seeing up to 7 centimeters through tomorrow. The rest of East Coast could see up to 5 centimeters of snowfall. Highs are going up similar to slightly lower than season norms in most places. Gyeongju and Chuncheon see highs of 8 degrees this afternoon, and Jeju will only see a high of 9 degrees Celsius. Then we can expect brighter skies than yesterday. Thursday looks to be a wet one nationwide, then spring cold is in store for the start of March. Saturday, we are looking at lows going down as low as -7 degrees here in the capital. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions. Those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. Coming up next is our panel session, so do stay with us.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead to better lives for all. New Lotte, the power of a better world. New today, better tomorrow. Lotte.
Doctors in training have been departing hospitals en masse here in Korea, while over in Brazil on the margins of the G20 meeting, top diplomats from South Korea, Japan and the US addressed global security concerns. So what is the latest regarding the standoff between the medical arena and the government here? And how are trilateral diplomatic interactions affecting geopolitical concerns? Also, what is the significance of South Korea designating a defector day?
Hope your work week is off to a good start. You're watching Monday's edition of Issues and Insiders. I'm Min Sun-hee. We start with a look at some of these stories making headlines here and elsewhere as well with our panel of foreign journalists. For this, I have Melanie Jensen here in the studio. Melanie, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I also have Celio Fioretti with us. Celio, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Pleasure to be on Arirang.
Right. Melanie, let's start off here on the domestic front. There has been a massive departure by doctors in training from major hospitals in the country in response to government plans to expand the medical school admissions quota, which is causing, of course, quite a bit of concern. What is the latest on that front?
Well, actually, up to around 70% of all trainee doctors have been handing in their resignation. There has been massive protests. And actually, experts are saying that due to this protest, all medical surgeries and so might actually take up to a year to get back into the same speed as it is right now. So it's already had a very, very big impact on the medical system in Korea. So the problem is that the trainee doctors are angry that the Korean government is planning to have more than 40% new medical students as of next year. The trainee doctors are saying that this is a problem because there will be a lot of competition amongst the new doctors. And also they're saying that the government is not really addressing the actual issue. So the issue for the trainee doctors is that they work way too long hours, 80 to 100 hours a week. And also the pay is not so well. So that is from the trainee doctors' perspective. From the government's perspective, however, they think that they have already addressed to a certain extent the salary. Their problem is that they say Korea is becoming an aging society, which means that there will be a bigger need for doctors in the future. And for that reason, we will need to have more medical students now. And also the Korean government is worried about the medical help in remote areas. They're saying that it is more difficult for right now for people living in remote areas to get health access, which is what they're trying to boost. And they are also worried that many senior doctors will soon retire. The trainee doctors' answer to this is that so far, actually, Korea has one of the best healthcare systems in the world. So there is no immediate need for doctors. That's why they're so angry. So right now there is a big problem, a big standoff with the doctors and the government. But the government has been saying that they're open for negotiation.
Right, indeed. Celia, speaking of strikes, I understand a strike by workers at the Eiffel Tower, which was settled there over the weekend. Yeah. It did cause quite a bit of concern last week, especially ahead of the Olympics, the Summer Olympics in Paris, right, this year.
Exactly.
Could you tell us about that protest and its implications?
Yeah, sure. Indeed, last week, the workers at the Eiffel Tower started protests, mostly to complain about the bad maintenance of the infrastructure. They were complaining about the appearance of rust on the steel. The building is more than 200 years old. It's a quite complicated structure to maintain also. And Gustave Eiffel, the engineer at the origin of the project, mentioned at the time of the construction, the most important thing is do not let it rust. Rust, as we know, is irreversible. Once it's there, it's really difficult to get rid of it. The tower needs to have a paint refreshed every 7 years. so the steel is not affected by the environment, the air, the pollution, the rain also. So it is a job that needs to be done very regularly. And the last layer of paint in 2020 had major delays. Still now, I think something like 20% of the whole work is done. So very much delayed. And the budget allocated to that issue is also at fault. The tower needs 100 million euros every year, and the city of Paris only allocated 50 million. So it's only half the cost. That's the big issue. To reassure you, the tower will not fall tomorrow. It's still a lot of good health, and the city of Paris is trying to reassure also the people for that. So you will be able to see it this summer for the Olympic Games, but there will maybe some work going on in this summer.
But hopefully people will be able to enjoy the tower this summer, right, during the Olympics. Melanie, on the diplomatic front, foreign ministers of South Korea, Japan and the US met in Brazil on the margins of the G20 meeting last week. Could you tell us a bit about their talks? And do you believe these trilateral talks will serve to perhaps ensure some form of greater stability here on the Korean Peninsula?
Yes, so this new talk is just the newest in a bunch of previous talks there has been between South Korea and Japan and America. So as far as I believe, the last time the foreign ministers were meeting was in November, as far as I recall, last year. So there has been a few months since the last meeting. And yes, I do believe that these meetings are definitely strengthening the diplomatic ties, especially because we have seen that the diplomacy again between Japan and Korea has not always been so stable and so good. So ever since Yoon Suk-yeol took power, he has been working a lot to make better diplomatic relations with Japan. So that's one thing. What they were talking about more specifically has not been fully enclosed to the media. What we know is that they have been discussing and having what they called a fair chat about China, an honest talk about China and Chinese issues. However, they have not delved into exactly what kind of issues they have been talking about regarding China. Regarding North Korea, they have been discussing their nuclear program, as well as the military cooperation that is believed to take place between North Korea and Russia at the moment. One other thing that I personally am very curious to hear if they have been talking about, it has not been disclosed, but if they have been talking about the recent invitation that Kishida Fumio, Japanese Prime Minister, has received from Pyongyang to an alleged state visit that might actually take place already in June. So what we know is that North Korea has said that they are now open to possibly inviting the Japanese Prime Minister to Pyongyang for some diplomatic talk and for strengthening the diplomatic relationship between North Korea and Japan. And this comes, as we know, right after North Korea has said that unification with South Korea seems impossible at the moment. That might be why they're turning to Japan. However, if Japan will go to Pyongyang, and also if this topic was even touched upon at the trilateral meeting, is not something that we know yet.
Right, and it also followed, of course, South Korea's establishing of diplomatic ties with Cuba, right, a long-time North Korean ally. Celio, another issue touched on during the actual G20 summit in Brazil was the idea of UN reform. There have been calls for UN reform, of course, over the years. Where does France stand as a member, of course, of one of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council? Where does France stand with regard to the idea of reform of the United Nations?
France has been pushing for reform since quite a long time, actually. In November already, the French ambassador to the UN expressed in a letter to the institution the need for critical reform. As you mentioned, France sits on the Security Council of the United Nations, and that's a place where there is a much needed reform, according to the French ambassador. The French delegates estimate we need to change the way the institution works, because since its foundation in 1945, the world has greatly changed. New powers have emerged, and the UN needs to make a place for this voice to be heard. France called for the Security Council to be augmented to 25 countries sitting at the table. That's a big change from the 5 present and the observer around them. They quote, some countries like Brazil or India now are big powers in the game, so they need to be considered as their right level. Also, Africa also is a major and probably will be even more important in the near future. So that was France is pushing for in the United Nations.
And what are your personal thoughts with regard to reform for the UN Security Council?
I mostly agree with that idea. Indeed, the world has greatly changed since 1945, and we need to account these changes in South America, in Africa, in Asia also.
Right, of course. And Melanie, staying with diplomacy, President Yoon Suk-yeol recently delayed his trip to Denmark. And while we wait for those bilateral talks to actually take place, what can you tell us about the areas of mutual interest between South Korea and Denmark?
Well, these years, South Korea and Denmark has been having closer and closer cooperation, especially when it comes to climate and to green energy. So I know that South Korea is very interested in Danish windmills and in Danish agriculture as well, and our methods to make agriculture in a greener and more sustainable way. So far, last time the Danish environment minister visited Korea, which I believe was last year, he came here to discuss ways to make South Korea's agriculture more green. And actually there has been a discussion about whether South Korean farmers should come to Denmark to learn some things about how we make sustainable and greener ways of producing farmland and cows and those kind of animals. Moreover, I also know that Denmark very much shares Korea's interest in urban mobility. Korea is one of the leading countries when it comes to developing urban mobility. And actually, Denmark has a small city called Odense, which is the ideal place for these urban mobility tests to take place, partly because that the city is located close to the sea, so it's possible for the so-called flying taxis to fly out over the sea so we can test run them. So I also know that that is an area that Korea and Denmark shares interest in and that they want to work more on implementing.
Right, indeed. Celio, a number of leading IT figures are also taking a greater interest in Korea's AI chips, I understand. What does that tell us about the potential that the country holds with regard to AI chips?
Yeah, this week the Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, is going to Korea for a big visit, actually. It's the first one in 10 years. He came last time in 2013 to visit President Park Geun-hye, and at the time it was also quite interesting. It was quite early for Meta to go abroad and meet the Korean partners. This time he is expected to meet President Yoon Suk-yeol and also Samsung chairman Lee Jae-yong. So I think there could be some partnership going on. We'll see what the result of the discussion will bring. Meta has been quite keen on AI recently. They announced they wanted to call what they call the AGI, which is a next generation AI, much more than what we know now with ChatGPT, for example. But for all that, Meta needs a lot of chips and semiconductors, which Korea produce quite heavily. On the other hand, also Meta has been reliant on NVIDIA, which is Samsung's competitor, but the price have gone up. So Samsung can be an alternative for Meta to acquire its chips. Also, it seems Mark Zuckerberg is planning to develop a new headset, a bit like the Apple Vision Pro that came out recently. And there will be some talk with LG to develop that project. So we'll see if Korea can deliver, but apparently for the tech giant, Korea is the new place for tech.
Right, so the prospects are looking quite bright then. Well, Lainey, moving forward, the Yoon administration has declared intentions to designate, I believe, July 14th as a day for North Korean defectors. Could you give us a bit more details about these intentions and why do you suppose they are significant?
Well, what the Yoon government is trying to do is to make the North Korean defectors feel more like they're a part of South Korea. And I think it is partly because North Korean defectors has been and are still very stigmatized in the Korean society. It's very difficult for the defectors to get jobs, to socialize, to get South Korean friends, which I generally think stems from some South Koreans still seeing North Koreans, even though they're defectors, as essentially people born in North Korea and thereby, to a certain extent, enemies or spies or people who are plotting against South Korea. So what Yoon Suk-yeol is trying to do with designating July 14th as a national North Korean defectors day is to show that the North Korean defectors are still part of the Korean society. And I think he has done several other initiatives. One of them is that from now on, he will no longer refer to North Korean defectors as North Korean defectors. However, he will refer to them as residents with a background in North Korea. And I think this change of language is very symbolical, but it's also very important because it shows that they are residents in Korea. They are Koreans. They just have a background in North Korea. And I think that is a much nicer way of referring to North Koreans than merely calling them defectors or North Koreans, which kind of has a negative cling to it. It is a way of promoting inclusion in the society, and also I think the day has a symbolical meaning, as it is the same day that the law ensuring support for resettlement was passed in 1997, as I believe. And the North Korean defectors society community has taken really good, they're really happy about this new law. They think it's a very good idea, a very good opportunity for them to also speak up about some of the injustice that they're experiencing, and also as a way to feel like a bigger part of the South Korean society.
Right, indeed. And Celia, with regard to North Korea, security pundits meanwhile claim that Pyongyang is using Ukraine as a live testing ground for its weapons. Is this the view shared by pundits perhaps that you've covered while doing stories on security concerns raised by North Korea?
Yes, it seems to be a win-win situation for North Korea. First of all, they can give Russia what they want and deepen the relationship they're trying to build with Vladimir Putin. And second, it does give them an opportunity to test on actual condition, war condition, the missile they developed for many years. However, there is a risk for them doing so. The North Korean missile that crashed in Kharkiv, Ukraine, in January was scavenged after its impact. And a British researcher found that all the components inside, and they could trace it back to US companies, German companies, even Taiwanese companies. So that shows how can North Korea smuggle conductors or components from outside.
Especially amid the sanctions, right?
Yeah, that's the issue I was going to say. Now we know North Korea, we know a bit more how they go around the sanctions. So the US might try to impose new sanctions or strengthen the way they control it. And also with this component, now we know the performance of the missiles. So we might be able to protect ourselves a bit more from the missile.
Right, hopefully, of course. Melanie, Denmark, for its part, actually, has decided to deliver all of its artillery shells, I hear, to Ukraine. Could you tell us about this decision, the Danish public's response to this particular decision?
Yes, I think it's a very drastic move from the Danish government in order to ensure a public show our support to Ukraine. I think for Denmark, still the majority of Danes are definitely supporting that Denmark is helping in the war in Ukraine against Russia. I think we have seen a lot of European media has these days been reporting about some kind of war fatigue in European countries, where more and more citizens are slowly getting tired of the war and also getting tired of donating so much money, so much military equipment to Ukraine. However, I would say in Denmark it is quite the opposite, actually. The majority of Danes, the far majority, are still heavily supporting the war, at least like helping Ukraine in the war and supporting that we should still fight against Russia. I think it's partly because we look to our other Scandinavian neighbors, Sweden and Finland, and we see how scared they are. And Finland and Sweden are both very close to Russia, so they definitely have the need of feeling very scared. So it seems very close to our Nordic identity as well. However, obviously, this move has also resulted in some criticism, partly because a lot of Danish military people have been out saying that now we can virtually not defend ourselves if we were to be attacked. And I think a lot of Danes also feel very worried about this, in particular because of the remarks made by President candidate Trump the other day, saying that if a country has not donated 2% of its budget to NATO, then America, with Trump in lead at least, would not want to defend that country. And to be completely fair, Denmark has for many years not donated 2% of our budget to NATO. So we would be in the shooting lines, so to speak, if Trump becomes president, if someone is attacking Denmark. And I think that is definitely, even though there is a small risk, it is worrying a lot of Danes.
Right. Well, that former US President Donald Trump triggered quite a bit of a concern with those radical remarks, I suppose. All right, well, that's all the time we have for this edition. And Melanie, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. And
thank you for having me.
Right. Celia, it was your first time here, but thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Right, well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.